I started the Real Mental podcast because it bugs me when film and TV miss the mark about how mental health gets portrayed. Real Mental is a podcast where a film-loving psychiatrist, that's me, talks to a film critic to help people figure out their lives by getting to the truth about mental health in the movies. Welcome, Sean Patrick Kelly, to the Ruthless Compassion podcast.
Hi.
Hi there. Today we're going to do our Real Mental new kind of little thing that we're doing in the podcast, which is talking about the intersection of film and psychology, which are two of my favorite things, and hopefully it'll be something fun for you as well. Before we start, I thought it would be great for you to just introduce yourself to the listener, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I am Sean Kelly. I'm a freelance film critic and blogger. I've been writing my site, Sean Kelly Movies, since 2004, so nearly 20 years. And so I cover festivals. I watch pretty much anything. So
That's great. So you have a very eclectic taste in the movies.
yes.
Well, I think The Quiet Girl is a very interesting movie for us to discuss today because I think it's been a bit polarizing. Some people called it dull and other people called it deeply moving. So why don't we start with your take on it? How did it hit you?
Oh well, I had a positive response to the film. I liked it.
What did you like about it?
Oh well, like it's pretty much it's a very simple drama, but it's an effective one. It's sorry. So it's pretty much it's about this girl who's essentially neglected by her family and sent to live with distant relatives in the countryside, and it's there she actually is feels like love and nourishment for the first time with these I think they're distant cousins of her parents, so you can move on from there.
For sure. Well, I feel like the movie was kind of a slow and quiet but deadly kind of a picture because there was a lot of very profound emotional resonance in it, and I think that it captured a lot of powerful themes. Uh, Do you care to discuss some of the themes first?
Well, probably start with the title, the quiet girl. So I think there's a quote in the film. The character Sean, who's played by Andrew Bennett, says that Kate, the titular quiet girl, will speak when she means to. And actually you see over the course of the film she actually starts to open up.
Yeah, so you like that piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I think about it as a psychiatrist, I feel like it was very well done because it shows that there are different responses to trauma. This is a girl who's not just neglected, but I think she's also witness to some behavior that's very disturbing. She watches her father being out drinking and abandoning her mother, who's very pregnant, and she also gets picked up by her father on the way home from school, and he also picks up this woman who is it's very clear that he's in an intimate relationship with, and she's a very quiet, reserved young girl, but she feels acutely, you can see by the look on her face, she feels acutely the discomfort of being in a car with this woman who looks back at her with a hostile comment and who is obviously competing with her for her father's attention.
Oh, glad you mentioned that because I was actually wondering if I was correct in that the dad was having an affair. So you kind of validated that for me.
Yeah, well, it was very subtle. Everything they did in that movie was subtle, right? And
Hmm.
if you're not paying attention, or if you don't trust your instincts, it can be hard to know what's actually going on. But it felt to me like the way this woman looked at the girl, it was very much that, she felt, this little girl is getting his attention and I want all of it, kind of thing, right? She didn't like the fact that she had to share the car and probably shared the affections of the dad figure, played by Michael Patrick, right? So I thought that was a very
Hmm.
interesting take, because this child was not just neglected, she was also witnessing things that were distressing to her, and she had nothing, like she had no outlets, nothing that she could do about all the bad things that were happening. The day that she went to school, there was no food because the father had drunk away all his pay,
Hmm.
and she ended up having to steal a bottle, a pint of milk that one of her classmates had left on the desk, and then the classmate bumped the desk, and the milk all spilled. And because she's such a quiet girl, the only thing she could do was go run away, and just that was all that she could do. She didn't have any recourse to any kind of solutions other than being quiet and shutting down or running away. And they even called her the girl who runs away.
Hmm. So it's actually a very interesting production choice in the film that the dad is the only character in the film who speaks predominantly English, while the rest speak Irish Gaelic. So he's like an outsider from the start, and he's like the closest film the film has to an antagonist. He drops Kate off, and he says, "She's going to eat you out of house and home," and then he drives off with her luggage.
Right. He forgets to leave her luggage accidentally on purpose behind. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was a very unsympathetic character, again, in this kind of subtle way, but not such a nice guy.
Mhm.
And it was interesting that the mother, when you think of rural Ireland back in the early 80s, the mother, there was nothing she could do. She was stuck in this marriage with this guy who was a ne'er-do-well. He gambled away one of their cows. He drank away their money for food for the children, and he was having an affair which she might or might not have known about. But what could mom do? Nothing, right? She was stuck. There's no divorce, there's no abortion, there's nothing she could do except keep making babies and just be long suffering. And again, little Kate, who seems to observe everything, is watching this and seeing how oppressed and downtrodden her mother is, and seeing this as a potential future for her. And you feel for this child.
Hmm. Well, then we move to the main plot of the film, which is she's dropped off at the farm of Eileen and Sean, who have a farm in County Waterford. And Kate essentially becomes a surrogate daughter for them, and we learn later in the film that their own child drowned many years earlier.
Yeah, that was a really interesting way they handled it, because when she first arrived, the mother figure, played by this wonderful Irish actress Carrie Crowley, she was very welcoming and very interested in a relationship with little Kate. But the dad figure, um,
Andrew Bennett.
Andrew Bennett, right, who played the husband Sean Kinsella, the mom played Eileen Kinsella. The dad, he was very much cold and aloof and ignoring her, until such a point where he puts a cookie
Puts a
on the
cookie on
table
the table.
next to her, and that's his first indication that he's warmed up to her. And we don't understand why he's so cold to her for the longest time. And it's so beautiful the way he very gradually opens his heart to her, until he becomes even maybe more beloved than the mother figure. And you understand that he's protecting his heart because he's been so hurt by the loss of his son that he can't open his heart to another child again, because he's afraid of the pain of loss again. And I thought that was very psychologically astute.
Well, if you think about it in the film, it's a kind of a horrible way Kate learns about the child's death from the gossipy neighbor who walks Kate home.
Yeah, and I thought that was very interesting because she's, another antagonistic figure. But again, there's these themes of jealousy that run through. Like the father's girlfriend is jealous of, the attentions that the father gives to others. The father is jealous of his wife's cousins where Kate is staying. And this neighbor is jealous of Eileen and Sean, who are clearly prosperous as farmers. And so she needs to subtly undermine things by telling a secret that is not her right to tell, and to try to, destroy that relationship. But obviously it backfires and the relationship just is closer. But yeah, these themes of jealousy are very interesting, that people are not okay with what they have and they're always trying to meddle in the affairs of others. Or hold on a second, I got to get my cat out of here because being a monster. Come here, darling. I thought you were going to be good, but you're being bad, so we're going to go here. Okay. Oh, thank you. Settle down. He's never like this, except, of course, during my podcast.
Okay.
So where were we? Oh, yeah. So I found that when the jealous characters came in, it was a very nice kind of contrast to the kindness of Eileen and Sean. How did you feel about how kind these people were to this child? Like, how did you feel about the contrast between, let's say, the dad, the downtrodden mom, the gossipy neighbor, the nasty girlfriend, and then these kind people?
Well, I think it's like early in the film, Eileen is tucking Kate into bed, and she actually says, "If you were my child, I would never leave you with strangers."
Yeah.
So like she instantly takes in Kate as her own. Well, we'll probably get into it later. It kind of like leads to the very bittersweet conclusion of the film.
Well, before we talk about that, what did you make of her putting Kate in her late son's clothing?
Well, you don't clue into that until after the neighbor tells Kate she's been wearing a dead kid's clothes for a month. But like,
Yeah.
but like, I think that kind of leads to Eileen taking Kate shopping for dresses, and then the shopkeeper comments about Eileen like she's Kate's mom, so they just assume that Kate is her daughter. So,
But there's even a scene before they go shopping where Sean, the dad figure, says something to Eileen. He says, "We can't keep doing this. This is not right." Something like that. I can't remember the line he said, but clearly he was disturbed by her clothes, and we don't understand yet why. But he's saying, this has to stop, or we have to do something about this. And then you see her, and then he says, "Go to the store," and he gives her money, and he sends them to the store where they buy her 2 dresses. But obviously he's expressing some feeling. So to me, psychologically, it felt like for Eileen, putting Kate in the late son's clothing was a comfort to her, because somehow it brought her closer to her late son, whereas it was distressing to the father figure because it reminded him in a more painful way. And I think that that's very interesting, because it shows how different people deal with grief differently, right? Even like when the gossipy neighbor blew the story open and Eileen takes to her bed crying, and Sean is able to take Kate down to the water and sit with her and comfort her. It's like, it really shows how everyone has their own response to grief. And although they're both very kind to Kate, the way they dealt with their personal grief was quite different, even though neither of them were able to talk about their grief. Eileen was able to be more open initially with Kate, but then she was also more sensitive and upset. Sean was more closed and slow to warm up, but then he was much more solid. So it was a very interesting way that the film showed these different ways that people process their grief and interact with another child.
And that actually reminds me is like when Kate first arrives, Eileen tells her they don't keep secrets, and then Kate learns that they've been keeping a very big secret.
Right. They don't keep any secrets except for this really, really explosive one. Other than that, no secret. I know, but that's also so human, right? The way we think of ourselves in a certain way. We have these self-conceptions, like I'm a very open, honest person, and yet I'm keeping this like exploding time bomb of a secret, right? That's psychologically actually very astute. And the filmmakers, I think had a very deep understanding of human psychology because they put so much real emotion and real awareness of feelings into the film.
Mhm.
So you brought up the end of the film. How did you see it? What was your take on it? I'm very curious to
Okay,
know because it's
first,
ambiguous.
first, before, okay, so it's essentially so Eileen receives a letter from Kate's mother saying that her new baby brother has been born, and it's probably time for Kate to come back home and get ready for school and such. So, but like, so just before they leave, you, Kate falls in the well, and you fear the worst for her, but it just turns out she got very wet and gets a cold. But like, so then they come home. They her, Kate's mother is happy to see her, and I think they're like getting ready to like maybe like stay for dinner, but then Kate's dad comes home, and so actually my favorite line of dialogue. So it's I think it's one of Kate's only English lines in the film is that Kate's dad sees her and says, "Oh, you're back," and then she says, "I am," very confidently. And then, then Eileen and Sean don't want to stay around the dad, so they decide to leave. And then, in the moment that's on the poster, Kate runs off after them and hugs Sean, and it's quite ambiguous where it goes from there because you have her dad chasing after her and Eileen sitting in the car, and it just ends with Kate hugging Sean and saying "Daddy."
Yes. So, if you're fond of happy endings, you can think that the father sees that the kid is happy there and it's one less mouth to feed. And if you're fond of sad endings, you can think that this father, who is not a good person, has this proprietary feeling about his possession, his child, and is determined not to give them the satisfaction of having this little girl with them who they clearly love. So he could be spiteful and keep Kate away from them, or he could be thinking about, one less mouth to feed and pass her along. So it's impossible to know what his reaction would be. But I thought that it was very clever of the filmmakers to leave it ambiguous because the viewer can decide on their own what the ending will be, or they can, be afraid of what the ending could be. So I thought that was very, very good because it really could have gone either way.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? You brought up the scene in the well. What did you think? Why did they put that scene in there? Especially since the child, the original child, uh, their son had drowned in I think it was like some sludge pond or something. What did you make of this potential second drowning? Why did they put that in the film?
Well, I think it's probably just to instill the fear of history repeating itself. But like, uh, Kate ends up surviving and just ends up all wet.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that it's like also it's about loss, right? It's like this film has so many themes of loss in it. There's this woman who's married to dad, the wife, her mother, and she has lost so much. She's lost her autonomy, she's lost her voice, she's lost her freedom, and she's lost her ability to just function as a person because she's just a breeder right now, right?
Mhm.
And the children have lost because they have a father who's not taking responsibility. So all of the children have lost a father figure. They've lost a mother who's completely distracted and can't even get her act together to feed them. And they've lost just the basics of what children need. And then the couple who takes in Kate have lost, a son, which is a huge loss. And so there's so many losses. And then when Kate ends up in the well by accident, there's like another potential loss. And it's showing that, yes, there are a lot of losses, but not everything turns into a loss. Like sometimes you're spared as well, right? And so I think it gives a little glimmer of hope, which made me feel like maybe they get to keep her, because if she doesn't drown and that loss doesn't have to happen, maybe also, she doesn't have to go stay with her parents, and that loss also doesn't have to happen. I think it interjected a little note of positivity in a film which had a lot of sadness and loss. That was my take on it. What do you think of that? Does that resonate with you?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Pause for a second. Female. Could you repeat that for a second?
Sure. I was saying that, I felt like because the film was so much about loss, but in the case of the well, she didn't drown. So that loss didn't happen. And it made me feel
Mhm.
like it interjected this note of hope and positivity and optimism. And that made me feel more hopeful and optimistic about the ending, that it could be that the ending was positive, because the film had so many themes of loss running through it. But in the case of the well, she survived and that loss didn't occur. And so it was like almost they were hinting that, not everything bad will happen. And there are some good things that can happen as well. This child did not drown. And so maybe the ending we could see as a potentially positive, because there were not just bad things happening.
Yeah. Well, so because Kate gets like a cold after falling into the well, it's like the excuse for them to keep her for another few days. So I think they said that they're going to keep her to the weekend, and then so I think when Kate comes home, I think her own mother initially doesn't like recognize her because Kate is like less quiet now. So I'm not sure where the film would go from where it ends off. It can go pretty much either way.
Yeah, I just feel like because of that hopeful note with the drowning or the non-drowning, that it gives us a reason to be hopeful. But you mentioned how, the mother didn't recognize her because she had changed so much. And I think that's also very psychologically astute, because it shows how with just a little bit of kindness and a little bit of nurturing, a child can go from this very withdrawn, you know, introverted, unhappy little person to really flourishing. And all that it takes to flourish is just a little kindness and a little attention. And just that little bit that she got from Sean and Eileen was not available in her own family because of the circumstances they were in. And so it takes so little, but even in her family there wasn't enough energy, money, wherewithal to just give the children that basic bit of attention and affection. And so it shows that it didn't take much for her to make such a big change. And what a shame that they don't even have that much in her own home. And you think about the other children and the new baby, and how all of them are being deprived of the basics.
Mhm. Yeah, so we should actually talk about the film's Oscar nomination because it was the first film from Ireland to get the Best International Film nomination, and so even though Irish Gaelic is like the first language of Ireland, and still used in like the rural areas as seen in the film. But you don't often see Gaelic language films outside of Ireland, so it is interesting that this film got enough attention to get an Oscar nomination.
I think it's probably because the themes that they were talking about were so universal. Even though it was such a specific film, as you say, it's rural Ireland, speaking mostly in Irish Gaelic, this very small, slow, quiet film, but the themes are so universal, which is about, what a child needs in order to thrive and how little it takes, but if it's not present, it really makes a difference. It makes a difference if it's present, and if it makes a difference if it's not present. And I think those themes are so powerful because we were all children once, and we all either got or didn't get those things. And we can all relate. Every single one of us can relate to the story of a child who in one circumstance is not getting what she needs, and in other circumstances she gets what she needs, and it really makes a difference to her. So I think that universal theme is so powerful and so meaningful that they couldn't help but recognize it, even though it was such a small, specific film from, a director that nobody knew, actors that here in the West, at least in North America, nobody knew, but still it resonated with us. And here we are talking about it. So clearly it resonated, right? Like we're having a podcast about it because it was so powerful. So I think, it makes sense that it would win an Oscar. I can't help but ask.
Nominated for an Oscar, all quite on the Western Front.
Yeah, nominated for an Oscar for sure. Yeah, you're right.
No, Ireland did get an Oscar this year for a live action short film, which is another cute little film.
That's nice. Well, speaking of Ireland, I can't help but notice that your name is Sean Patrick Kelly and you're wearing a green hoodie with some shamrocks on it. Did you particularly relate to this film because of your
yeah, I'm half Irish, half Italian. My dad's family from Letterkenny, which is in Donegal County. So yeah, I think it's further north than what's in this film set. But like I definitely wanted to see The Quiet Girl because it's from Ireland.
Yeah, I think it's lovely when we can have a personal connection to a film. It makes us more attentive. It draws us in more because we feel like there's something, even more resonant to our own history. Like your ancestors could have been living similarly to the way these families lived, right?
Oh, my dad's uncle had a farm.
Well, there you go. There you go. So yeah. You could have visited him and been in exactly the same kind of circumstances. Yeah, mm-hmm. That's lovely. Well, it's been really fun talking with you. Is there any last thing you'd like to say about this film before we go, Sean?
No, I think we've said all that there is to say.
All right. Well, once again, I just want to emphasize that I think in this case, The Quiet Girl really did represent very profound psychological and emotional themes in a very accurate and sensitive way. And I think that it was a very universal topic that they dealt with very subtly and sensitively, but powerfully. And I think it was a really good watch. And it was fun to see this child evolve from this very internally focused child to someone who could actually connect more deeply. And it really shows the power of love and kindness and how much a child can blossom when just given a little bit of, the right ingredients, like a flower to bloom. Mm-hmm. Well, thanks again, Sean Patrick Kelly, for coming on the Ruthless Compassion / Real Mental podcast, and all the best to you.
Okay. Thanks.
This is Dr. Marcia Sirota. Thanks for listening to the Real Mental podcast. Please leave a review and your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to sign up for my free newsletter at marciasirotamd.com. While you're at it, why not check out my Ruthless Compassion podcast with over 140 episodes and counting? And if you have any ideas for guests for either Real Mental or Ruthless Compassion podcasts, please email us at info@marciasirotamd.com. Happy listening!